On the 23rd of November, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev made the address to the nation, which is a rather important format for Russian political system, where he discussed the situation around the ballistic missile defense in Europe and Russian concerns related to that. It could be perceived as very important in Europe because, after all, that is first time during last nearly 30 years, since time of Yuri Andropov, Soviet and then Russian leaders did not do that sort of statements in that format. There are three most important, probably, points, and these are the decision to put under the combat regime early warning radar in the Kaliningrad area, then to possibly deploy short-range ballistic missiles to aim the European BMD sites, and the third, the warning that Russia keeps its right to leave the strategic armaments control regime.
Российская Федерация разместит на западе и на юге страны современные ударные системы вооружений, обеспечивающие огневое поражение европейского компонента ПРО. Одним из таких шагов станет развертывание ракетного комплекса «Искандер» в Калининградском особом районе. Могут возникнуть основания для выхода нашей страны из договора об СНВ.
So the main reason for making this statement now is probably threefold. First of all, it's the reaction to the American president's statement about the regime of the conventional forces in Europe treaty, when the United States decided to stop provision of information about its armed forces to Russia. So that is to counterbalance that serious political statement on the American side. Then probably the most important is the domestic need, because due to very serious social and economic situation in Russia, now Russian leadership need some informational reason to shift the attention of the Russian public towards a sort of foreign policy outside problems in order to calm down the domestic situation. And then probably also important point is that is the clear sign that Russia badly needs the respect from the West, because Russia was eventually cut off the decision on the ballistic missile defense issue. Now Russia is cut off of discussion of conventional forces in Europe problems. So that is attempt to attract attention by doing noisy statements. Well, so this statement could seem like very tough words, but actually they are very carefully tailored not to frighten anybody in the West, because Medvedev has not said anything new what has not been happening already or has already happened before that. So it should not be perceived as the real actual threat to the West. Because, for instance, just 12 conventionally armed ballistic missiles deployed in Kaliningrad cannot represent serious threat to Poles or to the Baltic states, and it's necessary to realize that. Early warning radar, it's not threat at all. The warning that Russia could leave the START treaty, well, it would be against Russian interests, so probably Russia would not leave. So the main threat which is associated with these seemingly tough statements is the possible misperception on the Europeans' side. They, especially Baltic states, maybe former Warsaw Pact countries, could see that as an additional attempt of intimidation from the Russian Federation, and their concerns could lead to tensions within NATO and within Russian-NATO relations, which is probably the main danger associated with this statement. It's necessary to be calm, to realize that this statement really was very carefully tailored, not to frighten anybody and not to be perceived as the real threat by anybody who is decision maker in the West. So this tough statement does not mean that something will seriously change in Russian attitudes towards cooperation with NATO in nuclear area. And noteworthy is that Russian ambassador to NATO, Dmitry Rogozin, immediately after broadcasting of the presidential address, made the special clarification that Russia was not going to leave the Intermediate Nuclear Forces in Europe treaty. So that is clear sign that Russia is interested in continuation of relations with the NATO. But probably these relations could be more difficult now, because it seems that due to domestic situation, Russian leadership will have to use, or will try to use, the same sort of tough statements, clearly tailored for domestic use, not for the West.